Hello fellow cinephiles, Film Guru here. So I'm continuing on my guilty pleasure videos, and today I'll be looking at Harley Davidson and Marlboro Man. This was directed by Simon Windsor and stars Don Johnson, Mickey Rourke, Tom Sizemore, Daniel Baldwin and a variety of others. They're sort of drifters, they go from place to place, they live life a day at a time. The film looks at a group of friends who have band together to save a friend's bar. He's been strong-armed by a bank to ultimately sell, and he doesn't want to do that. So they ultimately come up with the idea of robbing the bank, but not the bank itself, an armoured car. And mostly things go according to plan until they're set upon by these men dressed in these black clothes. They're not quite sure who they are, and they escape with their lives and what they think is the money. And it turns out that it's not actually money, it's a street drug called the dream. And this is where things start to fall apart. They ultimately decide to make a deal with the bank. For a particular amount of money, they'll give them the drugs back. Until they're ultimately tracked down, attacked, and all of them are killed except for Harley Davidson and Marlboro Man. And they ultimately go on the run, trying to work out what to do and how to survive. And ultimately it's about how they come up with a plan to turn the tables on the bad guys and ultimately seek revenge for what happened to their friends and to them, and to stop this, evil corporation or bank taking over their friend's bar. It all leads to a shootout in the end, like the old westerns, like a shootout at the OK Corral. Look, this film isn't great. It isn't a film that's brilliantly made or very memorable in its style of filmmaking. And it wasn't the hit that everybody expected it to be or wanted it to be. There was a lot of things that happened behind the scenes. Stories of Don Johnson not really respecting the director, Simon Windsor, who's an Australian director. And there's also an issue between Mickey Rourke and Don Johnson as well, that Rourke has said in recent years that he just didn't like Don Johnson, who just took over. His ego got too big and he took over, and it's kind of two ego-driven men at the particular time in their careers. Don Johnson had come off working on the TV show Miami Vice and was slowly working his way back into movies like he did previously in his career. And this was the one he chose to take on. And his performance is quite solid here as Marlboro Man. I think he's really, really well cast and does a really great job here. And for Mickey Rourke, he'd come off few hits and ultimately was an amateur boxer, and he was getting back into film as well, and this was his choice to play Harley Davidson. And it's an interesting contrast between the two. They work really well together. They're an interesting duo to watch on screen. There's a lot of humour to the film. In many ways, it could really be a modern day version of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. That is a far superior film to this, don't get me wrong. And he's better executed and much more successful in this movie. But in the concepts, it's very similar. You've got these two guys who do anything to help a friend, who ultimately rob banks, who go on the run and have to defend themselves. They trade in their horses for motorbikes. In many ways, it feels like a modern western. And that's sort of where the similarities end. There is a scene in it that's very reminiscent of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, where they have to jump off this cliff into the water in that film, and one of them doesn't want to do it and he's forced to do it. And they sort of pay tribute to that in this film, where they're chased up on top of a high building and their only escape is to jump in a pool below. Sort of reminiscent of that, and it does feel like that in many ways. What I like about this film is it's very entertaining, it's fun, there's great one-liners, there's a lot of humour in it, and it's just sort of the comedy plays off the action, and it's just sort of a film that I've gone back to over the years. When my late father used to pick me up, we'd go to the video store, and this would be one film I'd pick up every time. I have no idea how many times I've seen it, but it's still a film I go back to time and time again. And when I was a kid, I think it was all about entertainment and action and fun. And as I got older, it changed what I got from it and drew different things from it. And it is a film that when I go back to, I do draw something else from each time, even though it isn't a great film. I think on most part, the acting's solid, especially from the two leads. I think they worked well together, and they all had their separate moments and their moments together. And I sort of like how they weren't playing the archetypal characters that they would usually play. They sort of put a spin on these characters in a different way. Harley Davidson, with a character like that, this bikey sort of character, they're usually tough, hard-ass sort of characters who don't care about anyone, are up for a fight, willing to kill anyone and all that sort of stuff. But his character's not like that. He doesn't drink throughout the film, he drinks soft drink. He has this photo of this girl that he was sort of in love with that left him, that's sort of different as well. So he's sort of living in a bit of regret and wishing that he was with this particular woman. He's also making, like, they're sort of making light of the character in quite a bit, in a number of ways as well. And the fact that you find out that he can't shoot. They give him a gun and he can't hit anything, he can't use it properly, which sort of changes the element of the character, and I kind of like that. It felt like Mickey Rourke was giving it a bit of depth, something a bit different than what you'd seen in previous films in this sort of similar genre and this particular storyline. And I kind of liked that. It made it sort of refreshing and interesting and a little different in that way. With Marlboro Man, he's this, modern day cowboy, sort of old school guy. Harry smokes with him, but he doesn't smoke anymore. And that sort of changes as the film goes on. When things get a bit tough, he ends up starting to smoke again. He's sort of this shit-kicking cowboy, but in the end, he's from Las Vegas. And I kind of like that as well, something a bit different for his character. He has these boots. He wears these boots throughout the whole film that are falling apart. There's many scenes of him taping them up. Harley starts to ask him what the hell's with the boots. And it isn't until later in the film that he reveals it's the one and only thing his father ever gave him when he started riding bulls. He says, well, you could have told me that. And he said, no, I thought it was just between me and him. It's sort of like he's hanging on to the past in a way. He's hanging on to the idea of his father and the image of his father that he has, who obviously is dead now. And there's also this thing that is a reoccurring thing where he talks about the things his father used to say before he left this shitty world. And that's well orchestrated in a pool scene where he talks about the rules of pool and what his father taught him. And it's like his father still has a latch on him. His father still isn't far from his thoughts, and he is someone he respects and wants to be like. And there's a lot of things that he taught him, I guess, that you see throughout the film, where he won't shoot someone who's unarmed, and there's a lot of things he won't do in regards to his father. And I kind of like that gives him a bit more depth and a bit more of a different element. There's also, he has a relationship with the character called Virginia Slim, who is played by Chelsea Field. And it's sort of like this unspoken thing. They've had this on and off again sort of relationship for quite some time, and it suits Marlboro Man quite well. She starts to question what she wants, and it sort of looks at how she's getting married and she won't be able to see him again anymore, and it sort of has an effect on him. And he says things like, I am who I am, I can't change that. And she says, that's what I like about you. That's something I even loved about you, but I don't have to like it. And it's sort of like, she's the heart of him, and without her he sort of falls apart a little bit. And there's a scene at the end of the film where he comes back and he tells her, she's like, what do you want from me? Do you want my help? Do you want my hand in marriage? And I wanted to tell you before this thing ends between us that you were the better part of my life, the best part. And then he sort of leaves on the back of the motorbike with Harley Davidson, and it's just a powerful little moment, and there's just something about the romance between these two that I really like. You really feel this guy is set in his ways and he can't sort of change, and he is who he is and he accepts that. But other people struggle with that, and I like that. There's just things within the script and the storyline that sort of gave these characters a bit of depth. But the big thing that I like most about this film is the idea that these characters, Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man, they live each day at a time. They don't think too far in the future. They don't plan things too far in the future. They just take it easy each day at a time, and they just deal with what comes up. And I really like that. There's a line that Chelsea Field's character, Virginia, says where she says, I envy you two. Most of us work really hard at life, where you guys just take it one day at a time. And it's something I've really connected to, the idea of jumping on a motorbike, heading off into the unknown. There's something really something powerful about that draws me into this film, that draws me into that sort of world that I really love. Just being present and just living a day at a time and not thinking too far in the future and not getting stuck in the past, but just being as present as possible with what's going on, no matter how difficult it is. And I think that's really the message of the film. That's really what I draw from this. That's really what I love most about the film. And no matter how many times I watch it, I still come back to that feeling and that idea within it that I really loved. Even when you get to the end of the film, you've got Marlboro Man who's back riding bulls, and it's sort of, he's changed, his clothes have changed, he's got new boots, he's moving forward. Well, Harley Davidson sort of doesn't. He jumps on his bike, he's still the same man we met at the start that he is at the end. He picks up a beautiful girl and they hit the road. And he just sort of is still the same person. One of my favourite guilty pleasures. Anyway, that's all from me today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please hit subscribe down the bottom. Follow me on Facebook. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.